In this episode, the Eagles unveil their 7th debutant for the season, the Dockers looking to avenge an ugly defeat, and we pick our winners for round 16. Welcome to the West Sports Show. We are brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. I am joined, as always, on a Thursday by the roving Mitchell Woodcock, who is in Melbourne to cover the West Coast v Collingwood game. G'day, Mitch.
G'day, Quarters. It's freezing over here. You step outside, it's like the Antarctic.
Stop complaining about Melbourne's weather. It's a beautiful part of the world.
Nice and sunny, and you walk out there, it's so cold.
Jumpers, open fires, and alcohol are for Mitch.
Of course. But no, it is fantastic over here, and I do love coming to Melbourne. You feel like you're really ready for the football this weekend, albeit there's not much football in Melbourne this weekend. And there is one game, though, that we really are interested in, and it is first versus last. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this one plays out.
And I see, as usual, when you are on the road, just framed beautifully for that passport photo with the curtains behind you. Well done again.
Thank you. Yeah, I always make sure the background. Josh will get up me otherwise.
We have a debutant, number 7 for the Eagles this week. Number 7 for this year, Jobe Shanahan. Tell me a bit about him.
Yeah, Jobe Shanahan, this is a really interesting one. So, Quarters, he's been playing in defence the last month, I feel, as a direct result of Jeremy McGovern's first off, his concussion, and then obviously the retirement, which was probably long touted, and they were probably preparing for in a way. He's a high-flying forward, though, and that's what he was drafted as, and I expect him to play in attack this weekend. So teams will be out this afternoon. That indicates to me that Harry Edwards is going to be past fit. He trained, albeit for the 20 minutes we were allowed to watch on Wednesday morning. So him and Sandy Brock I expect to line up in defence, and possibly Tom Cole. But back to Jobe Shanahan, that'll mean that he'll go into attack, and I expect him to replace Oscar Allen. So it looks like it'll be a Bailey Williams, Jack Williams, and Jobe Shanahan forward line. It's going to be an interesting one for Jobe. He kicked 10 goals in the first 5 Waffle games, kicked 11 goals in 3 VFL games last year for Essendon Quarters, and 42 goals across 20 games across all these different levels. So a Bendigo Pioneers product, high-flying mark, it can play both ends of the ground, and I'll have a story on Saturday from his former coach at the Bendigo Pioneers telling us even a little bit about how they threw him in the midfield, and he can play there despite being 195 centimetres tall. So a really exciting athlete, and like you said, debutant number 7 for the year, which is exciting for West Coast.
Has he been spending some time in the defensive group at training?
He has been, yeah. So he's been primarily
what's the point there? So they were looking at him as backup for defence, but now obviously he gets to play in his primary role.
Yeah, and I think he's that young and that talented. I expect him to be able to play both long term. Look, from what I understand, a lot of people rate him really highly as a defender, an intercept marking defender, and I think that's probably where he could end up. But it wouldn't shock me, his ability to take marks at the highest point. I reckon he's going to be the best at the club in a few years' time aerially. From what I've seen through pre-season and Waffle, he's just fantastic above his head. He's got a great leap and reads the game really well. So I'm really excited to see where this one goes. But for West Coast, it's an interesting one, obviously. They've 7 debutants. We know they're going through a rebuild. It's first versus 18th. What do you expect from this young man under the roof at Marvel Stadium? Well, just to give a contest, that's what he's done really well at Waffle level. You talk to Andrew McQualter, and that's what he loves about this young man. So it'll be really good to see how he goes. Fantastic scenes yesterday the club shared as well of him being told if he kicked a goal at the end of training, he'd make his debut, and all the boys are around him, and you can see he was sweating a little bit and stressing, but he nailed the goal and they got around him. So yeah, fantastic from him. And same club as well. He played alongside Harley Reid in his underage year at Harley's final year at the Bendigo Pioneers as well. So this will be really good. And look, West Coast, they really are blooding the kids. This is the 7th debut.
Well, they had to.
It's the 4th from last year's draft too. So Bo Allen, he joins, as well as Tom Gross and Hamish Davis. Luca Grego is the only one from the actual draft that hasn't debuted yet, albeit Malachi Champion's a rookie. You add that to Sandy Brock, who's a pre-season signing, Archer Reid, who's in his 2nd year, and then, of course, Tom McCarthy, who had that blistering debut as the mid-season draftee, what feels like a lifetime ago now, only a few weeks ago against Carlton. So they're really pushing these guys through. I'm curious to see what the teams are this afternoon, but West Coast definitely going young and definitely exploring this list.
Great first-up game from Tom McCarthy. You're right, it does feel like a lifetime ago, but Back to reality for him, a game against the Pies.
100%. Yeah, it'll be. I think he'll suit the conditions too under the roof. Someone like McCarthy, they'll be able to move the ball smoothly through him. He'll be a lot more comfortable at AFL level, albeit he didn't look out of place with 31 disposals in his first game. But
the most ever by an Eagles player on debut.
Yeah, just really fantastic. I like the composure he had more than the disposals. I thought that really stood out. So I'm excited to see how they go. But outside of Jobe Shanahan quarters, the big talk this week is what do West Coast do with Nick Dacos?
That's
the tag is back.
Well, I think they send Brady Hoff to him. That's what they do. Look, I'm not sure if you do a hard tag on him. So Ross Lyon went to Marcus Windhager last week, and I felt like it was a lot of wasted energy. So I want him to be obviously held accountable. And by that, I think you could try and he can't get free at all. But try and restrict his kicks inside 50 to starters, because if he kicks inside 50, you're in a lot of trouble. He's going to hit targets. There's going to be causing some damage. So I'm trying to make him handball as much as I possibly can. I'm not necessarily a hard tag, but I'm accountable. And obviously you're trying to run the other way to expose him that way. So I think Brady Hoff would be the best man for him. 36 disposals and 17 contested possessions from Nick Dacos the last time they played. That was in round 9 last year. And I'll point out that in that game, there was a 63-point differential from scoring from stoppage, which is...
Yes, it's interesting, Quarters. I remember that game last year. I was there. There was a lot of attention into Harley and Nick Dacos. They clashed a few times. I spoke to Mark Hutchings yesterday, the premiership tagger from 2018, and he said that, basically what you said is that if you're going to tag someone like Nick Dacos, you've got to kind of push him back into defence and make sure his possessions are as far back as they can be, because his real weapon is delivering inside 50. Albeit, I think it's an interesting one. I asked McCoulter about this, is West Coast are still learning, so that ability to just teach the new game plan, but as well as ensure that you restrict someone like a Nick Dacos, it's a fine balance for West Coast. So like you said, the hard tag probably isn't really there, but as a team defence with someone just ensuring that he's always got a body on him as much as possible is probably the way they're going to have to go. But it'd be fascinating to see the way McCoulter goes about this, because we really saw Ed Langdon do the job on the King's birthday, which was, he basically hung off him for 4 quarters, and then we saw Marcus
Finn McGuinness has done it at Hawthorn, but the thing is, Windhager's had some great success on players like Bontempelli. But not everyone can tag Nick Dacos. You have to be a real specialist type. So I'm just not sure you put all that wasted energy into him, particularly given where the Eagles are at as a build. But I wouldn't mind seeing, Harley get a bit more time on him, Elijah Hewitt get a little bit of time on him, because this is education for these players as much as anything.
Yeah, 100%. But you also then you got to make sure those guys are running both ways. So Harley and Elijah are great attacking weapons, but they've got their next stage of learning is not just to be those engaging weapons that really hurt opposition teams, but the ones that also buy in to that team defence and make sure that players like Nick Dacos and Scott Pendlebury and Steele Sidebottom, who are in fantastic form, and like Andrew McCoulter said, even Josh Dacos, who is
he's been in scintillating form, Josh.
He's an elite wingman. And then Darcy Cameron, the ruckman as well, you've got to pay a lot of respect to. So West Coast have their hands full, albeit the way they can probably get it done is, if they could get it done, is the forward line for Collingwood isn't the best running around. Brady Myercheck's a really good player, and Jamie Elliott's having arguably
probably his best season
ever, and will be All-Australian at this rate. But they're going to debut young Charlie West. They don't have a traditional tall forward line as such, with a really big key targets, obviously why they're into Max King from Gold Coast reportedly. So it's going to be a really curious way they go about this and how they defend that sort of ground. And also, don't forget, Marble Stadium is a home away from home from Collingwood. It's not the MCG, so it's not as familiar as other grounds as the MCG is to them, So while they don't have to travel, it's still not where they like to play a lot of their football. So there's an opportunity for West Coast, albeit I don't think they'll win, but I would like to see them at least be really competitive and really show that game style they showed against Geelong for 3 quarters the other month, or earlier this month, sorry.
Just one last one. Elliot Yeo backed on the training track this week. Listed as, I think, 3 to 4 weeks away. Good news for West Coast. Wouldn't mind seeing him get run out in a month or so.
Yeah, so don't be shocked if we see him in about a month get some waffle game time. There's still about 8 games left in the season. I think if you get 2 or 3 into the back end of Elliot Yeo, it'll be really handy. He's still another 2 years left on a deal as well, so he's not going anywhere anytime soon. I really do think they've missed him. I know there's an argument among people.
Big time. Probably more than any player, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and I know there's an argument amongst people that, they've signed him for 3 years and he's been injury-prone in the past. It's not a soft tissue injury for me, Quarters. It's an impact injury. It happened at training. It's similar to Jake Waterman's when he did his shoulder. People, they signed him for 5 years and now he's injured. Well, the reality is impact injuries happen. They're just unlucky. It's got nothing to do with preparation. It's got nothing to do with the fitness of your body. It's just Elliot Yeo got tackled the wrong way, did a syndesmosis. Jake Waterman, same thing. So, those arguments to me are a little bit silly. I think Elliot Yeo had his body really primed last year. We saw him finish second in the fairest and best. And as well this year, he looked really good in the preseason before the injury. They've really sorted out his program to make sure they get the best out of him. He was just incredibly unlucky, and I still think he's got a lot to play in the next 2 years. And I think he's a real key to keeping guys like Harley and Elijah Hewitt and that in the game for longer periods of time. I still think that Harley Reid's early season form, albeit contributed by fitness, I think was also him trying to be too much of the man in the middle physically when Elliot Yeo wasn't around. And I stand by that after watching a lot of West Coast in the last 18 months.
You've caught the kite to Melbourne. I drove down to Coburn this morning to watch Fremantle train. So didn't see much of Alex Pearce at all. That tells me he's not playing this week. I'd expect him to play next week, but that's no certainty either. The coach, Justin Longmuir, has said on several occasions, we want to see some loading, some deloading, some reloading, and he just hasn't got that this week. So I'd be shocked if he's called into that side this week. To be honest, I don't see a matchup either with St Kilda for him of necessity. So I don't think it's crucial. He's going to be really essential to them in the back half of the season as we approach final. So you've got to get him 100% right. So I don't expect Alex Pearce to be out there. What I did find interesting was Sean Darcy, who didn't train much on Tuesday. He was out there. He was out there in 18v18, rotating the ruck duties with Luke Jackson. So I expect them to revert to that dual ruck situation. I had a look at the draw. So this week's against Rowan Marshall. So I really rate Rowan Marshall as one of the better ruckmen in the competition. He's a physical ruckman too. So I think the two of them could be required. After that, they've got Sydney. So Brodie Grundy, Hawthorn, Lloyd Meek, and then Collingwood, Darcy Cameron before the Derby. So I think it's a good time to bring him in. Let's see how it works. Let's see what they do. I think Darcy will be on restricted game time, whether it's 50%, 60%, 70%, whatever it is, he'll be restricted. So he probably rotates off the bench. Let's see what they do with Luke Jackson. Luke Jackson will be probably rotated sometimes through the forward line, sometimes as an extra mid. So that's going to be really interesting there. What does St Kilda do? As we just mentioned with Nick Dacos, all the talk's been the tag this week. Caleb Sarong, Andy Brayshaw. We spoke to Caleb Sarong this morning. He's actually anticipating a tag, and he said, we'll actually embrace the tag and try and turn it to our advantage. So they're probably expecting Windhager and maybe a Jack Steele to go to them. Interesting, of the 15 highest rated players in the competition now, there's 3 from Fremantle. Luke Jackson's number 2. So number 1 is Ed Richards at the Western Bulldogs. That probably won't surprise you. Number 2, Luke Jackson. Brayshaw is at 17 and Caleb Sarong 14. They've been in really good form this season and particularly in recent weeks. So I think there'll be some attention go to them. How do you see that bearing out, Mitch?
So I'll go a step back to the Alex Pearce one, Quarters. I really like them taking their time with Alex Pearce. The next month you mentioned those games. There's not really a key forward that can destroy them in those teams. Maybe Hawthorn if Mitch Lewis comes back.
Or Cal Shadir will probably be back by then too.
Yeah, but we've spoken about Collingwood. They don't really have the key forwards. St Kilda don't. And then, of course, Sydney, outside of Joel Amartey, really don't have tall forwards unless they bring a McLean in and with Logan McDonald sideline. So I like the fact that they're prepping Alex Pearce for finals. If the Bulldogs sneak into that top 8 and or GWS with Jesse Hogan, even a Gold Coast with King, if they finish in that 5th to 8th position, they're going to need Pearce to help out the likes of Cox and Draper in those positions. So to be honest with you, there's a lot more to play for Fremantle at the back end of the season with finals at this stage. And I think Pearce needs to be there for them to be a genuine chance at the flag or at least to go deep into finals. So I like that move first off. The Jackson Darcy one, like you said, Rowan Marshall actually got Luke Jackson last time they played and has a good record against Fremantle. So this is a really big one for Jackson.
Both of them played last time. They played the dual ruckman last time. Didn't work out
Yeah.
very well for them. It was a bit of a thumping. And it was the game that really set Fremantle on course.
It was, and it will be reflected as probably the game that turned their season around. So, look, for me, they're most likely going to go with both. I'm still not convinced of it, Quarters. I can't be. Until I see it convincingly, it just doesn't make sense to me. I think they structure up better without it. But, look, there are greater minds out there in football than me, especially at Fremantle, that have decided this is the way to go. So, curious to see the way it works. Sarong will get a tag, but I think like Dacos, he's very hard to tag, but for an opposite reason. Whereas Dacos will run you off your feet for 120 minutes, Caleb Sarong will grind you into the ground at contests and inside and out. He's so beautiful at that. I think he's probably the best actually in the AFL right now at that release handball, either hand, to runners outside. His effectiveness is not necessarily his kicking, his marking game, and his spread from contest. It's that handball. How do you tag that out of someone?
Well, he's also added the layer of kicking to his game this year. His metres gained has really increased for Caleb Sarong. So he's added that layer, particularly since Hayden Young's been out of that team.
100%.
Jager O'Meara was the other one today. Took part in the first part of match sim, but not the second part. Wondering if they give him another week in the waffle. Well, I guess we'll find out at selection. Fife also trained. No Sonny Walters today. Didn't train this week, but I did bump into him, and he there's no major dramas. He's still working his way through the waffle and trying to get some miles into those legs.
Yeah, and look, Sonny was good last week. I was down in Mandurah for that game. It was not conducive to small forwards, the weather, the way it was. It wasn't conducive to any football, really, to be honest, unless you were an inside midfielder at the coalface for the repeated stoppage. So he just couldn't get into the game. His leadership was vital, though, for Peel in what was a big loss to South Freo, considering the conditions, really. Dudley, I thought, was really good. O'Meara was fantastic. But like you said, whether they bring him back now or not, it's a different story. I'm curious to see what they do with Fife. I don't know there's no inside knowledge into this Quarters, but I firmly believe they played him for 3 quarters last week to see if he could get through it, because the fact of the matter is, if he's the sub later this season and there's an injury, he's going to have to play at least 3 quarters if that happens. So I think they wanted to test that. I think in an ideal world at this stage, they would like him to be the impact sub and come on in with a quarter to go.
I agree with you.
Beast at the contest. Whether that's right or wrong, again, I'm not sure, but that's just my gut feel at the moment. I think they'll put him into every couple of weeks until the lead up to finals, maybe even give him a rest or a game at Peel, but just to see if they can get his match conditioning up. But wouldn't shock me if finals, if for 3 straight games, if they make it that far or 4, he's going to be the active sub and be that guy that comes in and has an impact with 7 disposals and 3 clearances in the final quarter. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that for a champion of like Nat Fife, because while his body, the way he played, the cliff was always going to come a lot quicker. And I'm not saying he's hit that cliff yet, but they're nursing him to that end. And whether that's the end of this year or the next year, I think that's a really admirable way to go out, because he's still having a massive impact for this football club. So I really like the way they're using Nat Fife. Overall, I think Fremantle should win this game. I think if they do win this game, it really sets them up strongly. They need to win 3 of their next 4. So they obviously, like you said, go your way to Sydney, come back home to Hawthorn, and then they take on Collingwood at the MCG. If they could actually nab 2 of the Sydney, Hawthorn and Collingwood wins and get this St Kilda win, really sets them up for a top 4 tilt. So it's a big month for Justin Longmuir, but it's a big month in a good way, Quarters, I believe, because a month ago, we weren't talking about them being top 4. We were talking about can they make finals. And now we're genuinely talking them up as a premiership threat, which is just outstanding for them.
I want to shout out to Sunday's twilight game. Fremantle St Kilda is the annual Starlight game. I was out at Freo today and they had a special lunch on for 5 of the kids. There'll be some Starlight kids participating with the coin toss and with the running out with the team on Sunday. It's a wonderful cause. I've had involvement with it in the past, and I've seen close up the impact they can have on a day-to-day basis in the Children's Hospital in particular with the work they do with kids. It really does give the kids a beautiful distraction from the worries of their day. So well done to them, and anyone out there, donate, purchase, whatever you can, get involved with the Starlight Foundation Day. It's a very important day for them. Mitch, I want to talk to you about what's going on out at West Perth. So the coach is gone. The assistant coaches have gone. Who the hell is coaching West Perth this weekend?
So
is it you? Are you flying back to coach them?
No, Quarters, you won't find me up at West Perth coaching. There's a lot better people. Probably yourself is probably more qualified than myself to coach any AFL or Waffle side. But look, it is a bit of an interesting situation. So Jason Salicic was set to meet with the board on Tuesday night. He ended up meeting with them on Sunday night, where they told him his tenure was done. He wouldn't be getting a contract beyond next year, and they basically parted ways. Jason Salicic will argue that they sacked him, essentially. So that's happened. I understand that last week he was told that his contract wouldn't be renewed, and it just got this ball rolling. On the back of that, all the assistants have walked out. So Braden Duckworth, the forward lines coach, Matt Gordon, the midfield coach, Blake Arnold, the defensive coach, and Ron Skender, the ruck coach, all quit their roles. And then today, Premiership co-captain Dean Munns from 2022 Premiership has also decided to retire. Played on this year to help out Salicic, but it was always borderline whether he was going to play or not this year, Quarters. He's decided to walk away after 144 games. The Salicic move basically put an end to his career as well. So he's walked away from the game. So they've had to pretty much overhaul their coaching ranks, Quarters. So it's interesting. So Salicic had a 7-21 record, lost 10 consecutive games last year. It's the equal second worst in West Perth history since 1979, where they also only won 4 games, which was what they did last year. Paul Sanzoni has come in to take over as interim coach. Former West Coast midfielder Josh Wooden, his son that plays Resis and League football for West Perth, he's come in to do the forward line coaching. Dual Sandover medalist Alistair Pickett will be a general assistant. He's also come in to help out. Eagles Premiership star Stephen Armstrong from 2006, of course, famous for kicking that goal in the final quarter. He was already a senior assistant, having been an assistant coach at both Swan Districts and Perth. Missed out on both of those jobs. I expect him to be around the mark for this job as well. He's gone back to help coach. Well, he was a senior assistant. He's the backline coach as well as the reserves coach and development coach. He's taken a little bit on. And former East Perth coach Glen Buick will also be the senior assistant for the rest of the year. And injured skipper Luke Meadows and Mitch Pearce, the midfielder, will help out Sanzo with the midfield group. So massive changes at West Perth.
Why? What's gone wrong?
Look, to be honest, this was a succession plan that came in the middle of 2023. When Darren Harris came back to the club from Claremont, he was obviously controversially sacked from Claremont after the grand final defeat. Jeff Valentine got the job at Peel Thunder at the time, obviously is now in the development space at Fremantle under that. So he moved over to there. That Darren Harris was brought back. And when he was brought back, it was not only to win a premiership, but it was to set up a succession plan to help out, because basically Jeff Valentine departing wasn't part of the plan. Darren Harris set that up with Jason Salicic, who had been an assistant and even tried to make a comeback and did so for 4 league games in 2021. He came through, was put through as the successor. The board say, statement back then that it was unanimous. There is a bit of conjecture as to whether that was the case or not. I'm not too sure or privy to those conversations, but depending on who you ask is depending on what happens. And so he's come in, only won 7 of 28 games. They have a really mixed list of senior players and young men. They've got a 4-time Bertie Naylor medalist in Tyler Keitel, a Simpson medalist, albeit injured, in Luke Meadows, their captain, Shane Nelson, a ball magnet, Sandover medalist Aaron Black, who's closer to the end of his career than the start, but still a fantastic
They've got the quality
player.
there, though.
Yep, Josh Rotham, Keegan Knott, Sam Rotham, his brother, came back this year. They've got some real quality players. Kane Bevins, a young gun who I actually expect to be on AFL radar by the end of the year. But yeah, their list turnover hasn't worked as well as they would have liked. The results haven't been there. Their recruits haven't worked. Jason Gilby's either been injured or out of form. The former GWS rookie and West Coast Waffle player. Matt McKenzie came over from the SANFL, hasn't been able to break into the league side, which just doesn't look good for anybody. So they're in a bit of a flux at the moment. They're trying to stabilise. It'll be curious to see where they go for the next few weeks and months and who they appoint from next year. But to lose a favourite son, or to essentially sack a favourite son in Jason Salicic, 2-time premiership player, former captain, more than 200 Waffle games, which is nothing to sneeze at especially when it's a semi-professional sport. It takes a lot of commitment outside of your normal day-to-day to do. So 200 games is fantastic. It's a really tough decision. It's really split supporters and people within the club, I understand, and they're now doing their best to try and unify the club. But I think it's going to take a few weeks for this to settle down.
A few weeks, a bit longer. I don't like coach changes mid-season. I'll put that on the record. So no good there. Let's pick some winners, Mitch. But before we do, let's go to our old mate, David Short from Tab Touch.
Shorty's tips.
It's producer Josh here, and joining me in the studio is David Short from Tab Touch. How are you going, Shorty?
Really well, thanks, Josh.
Who is hot this week?
Going with Noah Anderson, the Gold Coast captain. He was at his best last week, 42 disposals, 7 clearances, 2 goals. He's now into $15 to win the Brownlow medal.
And it's really sad news for a Bulldog star.
It is. Adam Treloar, the All-Australian midfielder, he's really struggled with injuries this season. He's now out with calf issues and expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks.
And your hot tip for this weekend?
Hot tip, I'm teaming up with Gold Coast, Hawthorn, Adelaide and Freo all to win and Collingwood to win by 40 or more. That's paying $2.90. We're teaming up with a lot of the warm favourites this weekend.
Yeah, I like that one. And on the drift?
On the drift, the Blues tonight, Carlton, they've drifted from 207 out to 220 for their Thursday night clash with Port Adelaide.
And who's your player to watch this week?
We all know him pretty well, Nicky Dacos,
we
and they take on West Coast this weekend. He's had an excellent recent record against the Eagles. The last 3 games he's recorded 30-plus disposals. The last time they played, he got 36. He's paying $3.20 to get 35 or more and $9 for 40-plus this weekend.
Love it. Thanks, Shorty. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Josh.
Tonight, 5:30 p.m, Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide $1.68, Carlton $2.20. Good luck picking a winner in this game. 4 changes to each team. So Mead, Finlayson, Burton and Moraes out. Lear comes in and Boak, probably the 2 big ins for Port Adelaide. Durden, Pitney, Binns and Carroll all omitted for Carlton. Wiedering 50-50 with a wonky ankle, so we're not sure there. This is such a toss-of-the-coin game. Carlton, a big contested game. Port Adelaide, not a contested game at all. Port Adelaide scores a lot from turnover. Carlton doesn't score from turnover. So pick your winner. I'm just going with the home ground. It's simple as that. That splits it for me. I pick Port Adelaide, but it's a 50-50, really.
Yeah, I've picked Port Adelaide. Is there more of a fascinating game between two sides that are genuinely struggling?
Well, it's the fascinating game it's the battle of the coaches. So both coaches, we know Ken Hinkley's leaving at the end of the year, and I'm not one, as I just said, I don't like mid-season coach sackings. This is a bit different when you've got Josh Carr sitting there in the background. We know he's going to be taking over. So I could argue the case for a handover, but look, let's just see the end of the year out now. They probably owe Ken Hinkley that much for his length of service. And Michael Voss is just under the pump. Now, I wouldn't change a coach in this instance. I don't think his coach, he's contracted to the end of next year. I think there's more. Graham Wright, who will be CEO, they need to look at their list. They need to get leg speed. They need to get small forwards. They just haven't got them. The question I'd ask you, Mitch, is if Carlton pumps the ball inside 50 and Curnow doesn't get it, are you worried? I'm not. I just don't think there's any potency down there at all.
No, there's just no tackle pressure. The ball comes out so easy. The question is, Quarters, is what do Carlton do to rectify it? Their salary cap's the salary cap's maxed out. They've got no draft picks. Hawthorn have their first 2 draft picks this year. Everyone's talking about Jagger Smith as the saviour. The poor kid hasn't played a game because he's done an ACL. The Carlton to actually fix this is going to take an overhaul. It's going to take a move of whether you whether you move on a Harry Mackay.
No, they'll move. I reckon they'll look to move on Mackay at the end of the year, and they won't match or shouldn't match St Kilda's offer for De Koning at $1.7 million a season. He's not.
But that's still not going to make it much of a difference because it'll be your first pick after your last pick, which could be closer to 8 or 9, which then once the father, sons and academies come through early, could end up being 15. This is a real mess for Carlton.
It is. You're still clearing some space though, and you've got to start now. So make no mistake, Graham Wright will do a very thorough job here. He's had success in the past in this situation. He did it at Hawthorn. He did it at Collingwood. So he can do it at Carlton. I wouldn't start with a coach. The problem with Carlton is, Mitch, that they've turned over too many coaches in recent times. So stick with him. Show everyone you can stick fat with a coach, particularly someone of Michael Voss's stature. And I still believe calibre. Look, there's not really a plan B, C or D with him. He's really only got a plan A. But maybe that's the cattle he's got, So I'm looking at the list at the end of the year. I'm probably looking at the assistant coaching as well. No, he's got some talent around him, Ash Hansen being one of them. But I'm looking who else can we get in there to help Michael Voss, and I'm looking at the list. As you say, you mightn't be able to make big change. You might be able to get some trades in, to help maybe get a really electrifying small forward in, perhaps. That's what I do. Anyway, I am picking Port Adelaide at home, but very nervously.
I'm picking at Port Adelaide too. And just on the Michael Voss stuff, I agree with you. I don't think they should part ways with him. I think they'll figure out eventually that it'll be a similar case to John Worsfold in 2006 and his era at West Coast, where John is such a figure, such a revered figure, that he can motivate them, and then you need to put coaches around him that are highly skilled when it comes to strategy, and then you complement each other. Not every senior coach, has to be a strategic mastermind. It takes all sorts to coach different teams, and I think that's what Carlton need to work out. They need to get some guys in who can really help the strategic side of things for Michael Voss, and let Michael Voss play to his strengths.
Friday night, SCG, 5:40 p.m, Sydney, $2.35, Western Bulldogs, $1.60. Pressure, Mitch, that's the word. The Swans have been have had the best pressure differential at stoppage of any team across the last 4 rounds. A little bit of DNA coming back for Sydney at the moment, and we note that Errol Goulden was back last week, 18 disposals, 392 metres gained, 11 contested possessions. Pretty good comeback from him.
Outstanding numbers.
Brody Grundy's found form. Brody Grundy leads the AFL for disposals and ranks 3rd for contested possessions among ruckmen since round 9. So there's a bit happening at Sydney at the moment. I think the Western Bulldogs also a little bit up and down, but in the 8 and looking pretty good. Tests for Liam Jones, who has a calf injury, and James O'Donnell, who has an adductor strain. The Western Bulldogs, the midfield goes so deep. It's Sydney has some quality in there as well, but you got to look at exit from stoppage. The Western Bulldogs, they might be able to get them, on a quick turnover. If you can expose them on a quick turnover, not great chases, the Western Bulldogs. So I think that's the way Sydney can beat them. But I'm going to pick the away team, the travelling team here. I'm going to pick the Western Bulldogs.
I'm picking the Dogs, and simple question, who stops Marcus Bontempelli? And who stops Sam Darcy?
Yeah, well,
if you can stop those two, you will be. And this is no disrespect to Ed Richards, who's having a fantastic season, and Tom Liberatore and
Kennedy and Fraser.
But to be honest with you, if you can somehow stop them, you're in the game. Until you do that, the Bulldogs are going to be the favourites in my book in every game they play because of that. And they're the team that no team wants to be in September at the moment. If they're in September and those two are fit and firing like they were last week, albeit against a Richmond side, and you and I were sitting next to each other on Sunday watching this for various reasons, quarters, and screaming at the TV. Well, at least I was screaming at the TV. It was just phenomenal just to watch the way Tim English and Sam Darcy swapped out of the ruck and the forward line, and the way Marcus Bontempelli covered the ground. You just can't tip against them when those two are in that kind of form.
You don't want to be playing them in finals, that's for sure. Saturday, 11:20 a.m, People First Stadium. That is Carrara, by the way. Gold Coast, $1.38. Melbourne, $3.05. Hard to know what to make of either of these teams, Mitch, particularly the Gold Coast Suns, who find themselves outside the 8.
Albeit with a game in hand.
Albeit with a game in hand, I was about to say that. So, but all has not been so rosy in recent weeks for the Gold Coast Suns. They did generate 34 points from centre bounce clearances last round, which was their 4th most ever in a game. The Demons have won 12 of their last 13 matches against Gold Coast, dating back to round 1, 2015, by an average winning margin of 41 points. So they match up really well. I'm going to pick the Gold Coast Suns because it's up there and because I have really still no absolute trust in Melbourne, Melbourne is doing this season. You?
They can't score, Melbourne. Until they get a forward line functioning and a connection with their midfield, they can't score. They could have the superstars they like in there, but they can't do it. And to me, the Suns, Matt Rowell re-signing for 2 more years is a great boost for them. I think the reality check of the last month for them, where they haven't been in top form, albeit with the bye in the middle, has really hit them hard. So for me, I've still got faith in the Suns. That game against Essendon at the end of the year, the Bombers are limping already. I expect them to be really limping by that time, and they'll probably put some guys in cotton wool and in for surgery to get them ready for pre-season. So that's a win already in their books. I think Suns will play finals. So for me, yeah, Gold Coast should win this one quite comfortably.
I'll be watching this for Wits v Max Gawn. Wits 18 hit-outs to advantage in his last appearance. Max Gawn has taken 19 contested intercept marks, ranked equal fourth in the AFL. Also the midfields, Oliver, Petrarca, Rowell and Anderson. Anderson last week became only the second ever player to have 40-plus disposals, 15-plus contested possessions, 15-plus score involvements, and 2+ goals in a game. The only other player to do that was Dustin Martin. Of course, it would be him in round 17, 2017.
Handy player.
So very handy player. Let's move on to Saturday, 2:15 p.m, UTAS Stadium in Launceston. Hawthorn, $1.14. North Melbourne, $5.50. This is a game that I expect Hawthorn to win, and I'll be picking Hawthorn to win, not only for their solid record down there, but also the fact that they're going okay at the moment. But so is North Melbourne. The last 7-8 rounds, they've been pretty impressive. Very good win last week against Carlton. How can North Melbourne win? They can win with their midfield and their contested possession, because Hawthorn doesn't play that game very well. North Melbourne certainly does. They're young, they're enthusiastic. But I think Hawthorn will probably get them on their if there's one difference, is Hawthorn's set up behind the ball in their defensive 50 transition. I think they've got North Melbourne there. So North Melbourne needs to look at the Hawthorn small forwards. It's very different playing Hawthorn to anyone else. It's not necessarily who are the big kahunas we have to deal with. It's the little guys. And I think Hawthorn with this one reasonably comfortably, but they'll know they've played a game of footy. Of course, it's the matchup from the master and the apprentice again, Alistair Clarkson and Sam Mitchell. Hasn't beaten Mitchell coached Hawthorn yet, but it's going to have to happen one day. Could be this weekend.
The battle of the Tassie teams, called.
Yes.
The two teams that love a bit of Launceston and Hobart. No.
Yep.
Look, let's hope it's a better spectacle than the last game we saw down there, albeit it was a good win by Hawthorn down there against Adelaide. It wasn't the greatest of games.
It's excruciating to watch.
Proves they need a roof on a stadium, but hey, we won't go into that.
Interesting fixturing.
I expect Hawthorn to get the win. North Melbourne have been really improving. I like the way they're going about it. Young teams always have a bump like this where they go up all of a sudden and they play 6 to 8 good weeks of football. The problem is there is always that cliff that comes when they tire. The way that North Melbourne have played,
It looks like tiring at the moment.
Yeah, but I think it's going to come. So it wouldn't shock me if it comes against a Hawthorn side who are spluttering at the moment and would want a statement win. And a 7 to 10 goal win against the plucky North Melbourne, that's a statement win at the moment. You wouldn't have said that 10 weeks ago, but you could say that right now. So I expect Hawthorn to win. But yeah, I think this one could be a good game to watch depending on what North Melbourne turn up.
Interesting fixturing again. This is a twilight game. I haven't looked at the weather, but obviously the last game v Adelaide was shocking, atrocious conditions. This is
if it's anything colder like that it is here, then yeah, it's going to be nice and freezing for them.
Harden up, Mitch, harden up. That's what jumpers, open fires, and alcohol are for. I told you before. Marvel Stadium, Saturday, 5:35 p.m. Collingwood, $1.01. West Coast Eagles, $14. Cole with a hamstring test, Edwards with a hamstring test, Shanahan we spoke about before comes into the team, and Maynard foot test for Collingwood. Generated 59 points from attacking midfield chains last round, is seventh most in a game and the most since 2018. Since round 12, the Magpies have scored from 30.4% of their clearances, ranked number 1. You mentioned Josh Dacos earlier, has had 30-plus disposals in each of his last 4 games against bottom 10 opponents, averaging 29 disposals and 487 metres gained across all games. West Coast has led the scoreboard at quarter time in just 3 games this season, the equal fewest of any side. They don't want to start in sluggish fashion in this game, Mitch, because Collingwood will feast upon that. The Eagles have also conceded 16.1 marks per game in their defensive 50, the most in the league. You mentioned Collingwood's not got the most awe-inspiring forward line, but they get the job done. There's several matchups there, Jamie Elliott being one of them they'll find difficult. I think Collingwood win this pretty comfortably. Like to see the Eagles keep it under 6 goals.
Yeah, just the competitive Eagles we saw against Geelong would be a win for them in my book. So Collingwood to win. We've already discussed a lot of these quarters, and that's just the way I see it going to go. But yeah, still plenty to play for West Coast in this last half of the season, and I'm excited to see some of their kids flourish.
Sunday, 1:20 p.m, MCG, Richmond, $6.75, Adelaide, $1.11. The Tigers have scored 10.6 points per game from forward half stoppages, which ranks them last. Since round 12, they've lost the uncontested possession count by 17, 1.3 per game, which ranks them last. But the Tigers have won their last 4 matches against Adelaide at the MCG by an average winning margin of 38 points. Having said that, I think Adelaide win this one pretty comfortably. Again, it's a bit like the Collingwood West Coast Eagles game. Would like to see Richmond maybe under 5 goals, I'll say, given it's their home ground. But Adelaide, it's a really good opportunity to go to the MCG, a place where they don't play all that often, and put in a good performance pre-finals, because I expect them to go quite deep in September.
Yeah, Richmond have run out of juice quarters in my books at the moment. They were plucky at the start of the year. The young guys are feeling it. The Noah Bolter disruption, they can try and sugarcoat it all they like. It's disrupted his season, and he's terribly out of form, as it should, to be frank. So Adelaide should win this. They need, like you said, they need a good win on the MCG. They're a premiership contender at the moment, and they could fire. So for me, the Crows should get it done, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's a real comprehensive victory. That tall forward line is going to be really hard to handle for Richmond. So I expect them to go nuts.
And the real issue for Richmond at the moment is they're not getting bang for buck. So, all the hard work that goes into getting inside 50 entries, and Tom Lynch, a player who we have great admiration for on this podcast, has got a shot at goal accuracy of 39% this season, which is the worst rate of the top 25 in the AFL for shots at goal and the lowest of his career. So the police are after you, Mitch.
Caps
we're
are
both
after
going
me.
For Adelaide comfortably. Final game of the
round.
Final game of the round. Fremantle and their Starlight game. Fremantle $1.26. St Kilda $3.35. Optus Stadium 3:10 p.m. They're talking it down as it's not a revenge game, but it is a revenge game. Played them in round 8, got completely turned over by St Kilda in almost every metric measurable. But a lot has changed since then. They've turned it around. The week after that, they had a really competitive game against the competition-leading Collingwood at home and have strung together 5 in a row after that point. So it was almost the shot they needed across the bow to get their season moving, the Dockers, and they certainly have since then. Fremantle hasn't conceded over 100 points in its last 19 games at Optus Stadium, which is its longer ever streak without conceding 100 or more points at the venue. We've had a look at their forward line, Amos, Tracy, Voss. It's a really potent forward line. They're starting to really gel together. I had a feature today in talking to Josh Tracy just about how that partnership of the big 3 boys, as he calls them, is really evolving. So I look at the St Kilda defence. I think Carl Wilkie got Josh Tracy last time and did a really good job on him. I expect him to go to him again, but I think there's too many big guns down there for St Kilda to cover. I'd expect this to be a relatively comfortable win for the Dockers, but I think they'll be out to make a statement against a pretty feisty Ross Lyon, who always likes coming over here and stealing the points from Freo.
Well, it's his first time since he's been back at St Kilda that he's actually going to play against Freo in Perth, which is extraordinary because you thought this would be a blockbuster game for the AFL to book. So it's going to take a long time. Curious to see. He'll obviously be on the big screen at some stage quarters. I'll be watching from my hotel room here in Melbourne, and curious to see the reaction he gets from Freo fans. But yeah, look, to me, this is a massive game for Fremantle. This is one of those games that will decide where they end up on the ladder. I know that seems like an obvious statement, but I really do mean it. I think their draw, like I said, after the next 3 weeks, they need to steal 2 of those, but they need to get this win first. They should win. I expect them to win, but Ross Lyon sides, you know what they can do. They're dangerous.
The boa constrictors, that's right. Mitch's favourite time of the week, the Thirsty Camel mailbag. This week's special, Great Northern Super Crisp Stubbies. Camel Club member price is $52.99 a carton. So join up in-store or online today if you haven't already, Mitch. As usual, we'll be giving away a $50 digital voucher thanks to our long-time sponsors, Thirsty Camel. Get your questions in for next week to TheWestSport at wanews.com.au. Please include your mobile number at the bottom of your email, as we will send you a digital voucher if you are a weekly winner. Mitch, this one from Paul in Rockingham. Morning, fellows. I'm not happy this week as I have heard the F word used, as in Fremantle. When I hear the word, I have to make myself a chamomile tea to calm myself down. I don't want to hear it because I don't want to look too far ahead, so you can put it out to my fellow supporters there to put a lid on it. And when the time comes, let it out then. On a side note, I'm not a fan of chamomile tea and I don't want to endure another cup. Thank you from Paul from Rockingham. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying just get rid of the lid. Embrace it. Enjoy it.
Has anybody ever from Rockingham ever had a chamomile tea? It's a surprise.
Well, I think there would be some elderly residents down in Rockingham who would enjoy a nice cup of chamomile.
I can say that. My dad lives down in Rockingham. It's fine. No, look,
ever had a cup?
Fremantle fans just get so
Ever had a cup of chamomile tea? Horrible stuff.
I don't mind. I don't
I'm
mind
a
a green tea.
peppermint and licorice man for me. If
Peppermint
I
and
go down
licorice.
that path, yeah.
No, look, Fremantle fans, they're shocking when it comes to this up, though. As soon as you start mentioning success, you get a little bit excited. They freak out. Like you said, Quarters, just embrace it. Your team's up and about, have a crack. But I don't, look, the flag mantle stuff's a bit of fun. It sells merch. Same as Wharfie time, same as all that. Like, we get so sensitive as football fans. We get so tall poppy syndrome as well and like to tear each other down. I think it's going more the American way now. I'm embracing that side of things. I think it's great. So get around it. Go the flag mantle. Let's have it. Let's see it. Let's bring some joy to WA football.
Sorry, Paul. We haven't talked it down. We've talked it up. This one from Craig from City Beach. G'day, boys. Just a few thoughts and ideas for the AFL this year. Let's have a special themed round, Rugby League Awareness Week, to celebrate or rival. The perfect slot would be the week before the finals in the AFL. Tongue firmly in cheek there, Craig. Rename the Brownlow the best midfielder with mediocre teammates award. And also congratulations to Freo for fighting hard in a landmark case to avoid a lengthy spell on the sidelines. Actually, maybe he should have just belted the bloke. Of course, he's talking about Alex Pearce, who's already missed the 3. He would have missed had he remained suspended. Now he's maybe miss a 4th. They had to fight the case. They had to get him off. You know that, Craig. Well done to the Victorian clubs for promoting the "Don't Pick Murphy Reid as He'll Go Home" agenda. Geez, Craig's in a feisty mood. Finally, whose idea was it to give security guards chairs on the ground? George Costanza? At least they could have given them a rocking chair. If you're a Seinfeld fan, you'll know where that one's coming from.
I got to go back to the previous statement and just say, what are we going with here? Come on, get a bit of excitement. It's football season. It's entertainment product.
I'm going to save the best for last, Mitch. This one from our old friend Michelle. Hi, Quarters. St Kilda has hosted a home game against Fremantle 3 times in a row for 3 seasons. On Sunday evening, the late game again, Dockers fans belatedly have the opportunity to express their true feelings to former disgraced Fremantle coach Ross Lyon. This one, my favourite for the week, Shorttey from Alexander Heights. This is left field. Guys, not sure if you're aware, but this week marked the winter solstice, otherwise known as the shortest day of the year.
I am aware. My friend messaged me on the morning of it to say Happy Winter Solstice Day.
Okay.
I don't know we celebrated that, but apparently we do.
Well, mate, when you're living and working in London, as I did for a couple of years, and you get up it's dark when you get on the tube, you go to work, you don't leave the office all day, you leave the office, it's dark. You can go a whole week without seeing sunshine. So I don't think we know what it's like here.
I did that during the Con Games at one stage. It was ridiculous. We were covering it overnight.
Anyway, winter solstice. Wouldn't this be a great time to have a themed round? We're on theme rounds this week. Theme round every year celebrating the shortest players in our game. This weekend's Eagles-Magpies game could be the Phil Matera Tony Francis Cup. The Hawks and Roos could play for the Nick Watson-Caleb Daniel Trophy. And the Dockers and Saints could vie for the Hayden Ballantyne Stephen Milne Pest Prize. What do you reckon? That's from Shorttey from Alexander Heights.
Shorttey, I don't mind the last one, the Stephen Milne Hayden Ballantyne Cup. That actually, you know what? I'd love to see those two walk out with a cup played between Freo and St Kilda. I reckon it would be the funniest thing ever. And you know what? Balance is doing a bit of boxing as well, as you know, Quarters. So maybe that's the next boxing match for him.
Doing it for charity, 0 to hero, doing a good job too, Bellas. So
Maybe that's his next matchup. Stephen Newham versus Hayden Ballantyne.
well, that'd be a nice matchup, wouldn't it? Ooh.
That'd be a great fight. I'd go and watch that. 100%.
I'd rather see Matthew Scarlett v Hayden Ballantyne, to be quite
It's
honest.
a different weight class, isn't it?
I know, but it's
You
still
ask Barra, he wants to see me versus Adam Simpson in a charity boxing
Does
match.
he?
Oh, he's determined to see
So what
it.
do you reckon, Mitch? I think Shorttey from I'd like to see Shorttey from Alexander Heights walk away with a digital prize. What do you think?
I do too. I just don't think his real name's Shorttey.
Don't you? Well, we'll find out next
Well,
week.
he's talking about short people.
Yeah, I know. Shorttey, of course. Shorttey, you are the winner of this week's $50 digital voucher. Thanks to Thirsty Camel. We will chase you and get your details. We have been brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Remember, Mitch, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music. Leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Now, mate, you go and make yourself a nice cup of hot Milo, get a jumper on, have a hot bath or something, have a hot spa in your luxurious hotel you're staying in. Get yourself nice and warm.
I will. There's a faux place across the road I'm excited to try, actually. So,
Oh,
faux
nice.
or far? How do you say it?
Faux.
Faux? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try that later on. But no, looking forward to this weekend's of footy court. There's only 7 games, but it should be a ripper.
Okay, mate. Thanks for your time once again. We'll talk to you next week.